Hi y'all, bonjour, hola, my name is Trish. If you're new, welcome. In today's Photoshop tutorial, we are going to do a new photo manipulation effect in a miniature form of myself lighting a cupcake. I took a couple of pictures and I took the best one, and I'm going to use that to see how best we can match the two images. So I'm going to go back to this image, and I'm going to go ahead and drag my image. It's locked, so I'm going to unlock it, and I'm going to drag my image into this file. I'm going to go ahead and scale it down like that. Now, to make the background cut easier, I'm going to go ahead and zoom in so you can see the image is sharp, and I'm going to take my lasso tool and I just want to go ahead and just cut around, so it makes it easier for Photoshop to identify the outline of the subject and basically give me a clean cut. So with this done, I'm going to right click on my image and select layer via copy. You want to turn off your original image. You don't need that anymore. Oops, I'm on top of the cupcake. Isn't that cool? So I'm gonna set this somewhere here, and I'm gonna take off the background. I'm gonna zoom in. I'm gonna go under my property. If you don't see remove background under quick action, you need to click on your quick action again. It will activate the remove background. Now we can click on that and watch as Photoshop takes off the background. Now when you zoom in, you notice that Photoshop did a good job removing as much as it can, but around my leg didn't do a good job. So we're going to pick up the lasso tool, and I'm just going to trace something like this. Now with my brush tool, I'm going to pick my brush tool. You want to make sure your foreground is black, and you want to make sure you're on the layer max thumbnail. We're going to increase our brush by clicking on the left or right bracket, and we want our foreground to be black. We all know that black hides, white reveals. So I'm just going to use that. I notice that my flow is at 9%, opacity is at 19. So that's why when I was erasing, you couldn't see it. So whenever you try to paint or erase and you don't get the effect that you want, always check your opacity or your flow. Now I'm going to go to my select and inverse my selection so that Photoshop will make a selection this time of the inverse of what you see. And I'm going to flip my foreground to white so I can paint in, I can just paint in the middle portion because that place looked like it was chopped too much. I'm going to go ahead and press Command D. Now you can see that my leg is smooth. So the next thing we want to do is we want to set this somewhere here, and also scale me a little bit. I'm going to move my image inside. Notice that if you move your image out and you expand your image, it will cut off your subject. So you want to move your subject in, and then you want to turn it off. Now we are going to unlock our background. Click on your crop tool because we want to enlarge this. So I'm going to expand it this much, and you want to make sure that your content aware, typically it will be checked off. Check your content aware and click on the check, and Photoshop will basically try and fill this in. Now you notice that it's not perfect, so we are going to use the patch tool to fill this in. So I'm going to click on my patch tool. Now typically when you go looking for your patch tool, you will see the spot healing brush like that. So you want to click on the little rectangle. It will give you the breakdown, and you can select your patch tool. So we want to make a quick selection of this area, and we are going to try and pick up other areas to match it. And once you get something you unselect and then you make another selection, go look for another spot. Now for this corner, we're going to make a selection like that and then move that to align with that and release. So now that we have everything uniformed, the only issue now is how to expand the top, because if I turn on my image and I use my move tool and I set it right there, it's good, but it's not in line with the candle, and I need to be around this position to make it work. So we are going to pull me down again, turn this off, and click back on your background, pick up your crop tool, and we are going to increase it a little bit more like that. And we are going to trust that Photoshop will do its best to fill it in. So we have our content aware on, hit your check, and let's watch and see what happens. So Photoshop was able to do a good job to basically give us just the blue background. So I'm going to turn my image back on with my move tool. I'm going to go ahead and move me and set me right there. So this is in a good proportion, and this is good enough. I can scale myself a little bit more bigger, and I think this is good. I'm going to click on the background and pick my lasso tool, and I'm just going to go ahead and cut something like this. We're going to do something like that, cut around the cake like that. So now that we have this, I'm going to make a copy, right click, make a copy, and I'm going to go ahead and move this so it sits somewhere here. And notice that this looks a little bit good, and I'm going to move it up a little. So you notice that I'm just stretching it a little, and it sort of works very well. I'm going to double click to accept. Now I'm going to pick up my brush tool, but before I do that, just so I don't lose anything that I erase, I'm going to add a layer mask and use the brush technique with my foreground as black. I'm activated. I can go in because I have enough. I can basically brush this in and it looks good. Now we can basically try and do that around the cake as well. So around the cake is sort of looking good. Now on the top, I'm just going to blend this in just like that. And you notice that you can't tell where the bottom starts and where it ends. So this is really good. So what we're going to do, we're going to zoom in like that, and then pick your brush tool with your foreground as white. White reveals, black hides, reduce it, and basically let's paint around. Now we have to do it for the other end. I know it's a lot of work, but we can do this. So what we are going to do is that we're going to click on this one, which we already have, Command J, make a copy. Now we're going to move that over here, and I'm going to hold down my shift and stretch this like that and double click. Now I know you're thinking this doesn't really match because the colors are off. Yes, I do agree with you. So what we are going to do is we are going to go ahead and add a curves adjustment, and we are going to increase the brightness to blend in that area. But notice that when I brighten the image, notice when I move the curve up, it brightens the entire image. So we're going to click the curves to only the image below. So click on that, and you notice that any changes I make only gets affected to this image. So now that we have something very close, we are going to go ahead and begin to paint in this area. So I'm going to go ahead and pick my brush tool with my foreground as black hide. So we want to go ahead and paint over this area, basically to hide some portions. So I'm going to do Command Z and paint this much. And we are going to reduce the opacity of this layer so we can see the areas that we want to keep and the areas that we want to basically hide. So I'm going to reduce my brush and I'm going to go ahead and paint in this area. Go under your quick selection tool, pick up your object selection. We're going to zoom in and see if we will be able to get a selection. Now this doesn't seem to work, so we will have to basically trace out this candle. So I'm just going to use my lasso tool and I'm just going to go ahead and trim. Make sure that you are on the background layer, right click to make a copy, and we are going to go ahead and select. Now that we have this, I'm going to go ahead and rotate like that and set it right there. Now, if your transform is not activated, all you have to do is click on Command T or Control T. Now, if you are on a newer version of Photoshop, once you choose your move tool, you need to check your auto select and show transform. Now that will activate your transform command anytime you select an object. So now we want to set this object above, but in the layers panel is beneath. So you want to go ahead and move it to be at the top. And we are going to zoom in. I'm going to move this up like that to cover up the stick as much as possible, and I'm going to rotate a little like that, and we are going to reduce the opacity so that we can basically trim off my hand. Now before I do that, I'm going to make a copy, Command J. We're going to make a copy, Command J, since I will be needing it for the rest of the stick beyond. I'm going to turn this off. And I'm going to zoom in, and with that layer I'm going to click on the layer, add a layer mask, and then with my foreground as black, pick up my brush tool, reduce my brush, and I'm just going to go ahead and paint right around my hand. Now when we go ahead and we turn on, you see that this is good. Make sure that you are on the layer mask thumbnail, and we are going to go ahead with our foreground as white. We're going to go ahead to paint this in to reveal this section of the candle that is beyond. Now, when I go back and turn on my opacity, if I zoom out, this looks good. Now, obviously, this portion shouldn't be included, so we are going to basically go ahead and paint to show that my arm is in front of the stick, like that. Zoom out, and we're close. Yay! So now that we have this, I have my stick, I'm ready to light a candle. So I'm gonna go back to this image. I'm gonna pull that in. So I'm gonna drag this image. You wanna unlock, drag this image and drop it in here. And what we are going to do is we want to put that on top of the candle, but we need to take off the background. So we need to change the blend mode. So I'm going to change the blend mode to screen. Screen basically hide anything that is black. and we're going to set this on top of our candle like that. So pick up your brush, increase by using the left and right bracket, and we are just going to paint to basically get rid of that. Now you see some white line, so you can paint that also. We're going to zoom back in. Now this looks good, but the problem is our candle doesn't seem to be burning. So we are going to use our lasso tool, and we are going to just make a quick selection around our candle like that, just the area where it's burning. We are going to go ahead to add a solid color. So go under adjustment, add a solid color, make that black so we can all see that. Click OK. Now we want to go ahead and reduce the opacity so it's not too much. And also we need to give this a little bit of a blur effect. So go under filter, choose blur, and choose Gaussian blur. Now you need to first convert that layer to a smart object before you can do anything. So you can see that I'm just adding a little bit of a blur effect so that we get a realistic look. I'm going to zoom out. And so we have a candle that is burning. Now we want to go ahead and light up the other candle as though I have done that, and now I'm doing this one. I'm going to unlock, drag this, and set that in here. I'm going to zoom in so we can see, and I'm just going to make a quick selection around this. So I'm going to go ahead and basically cut this area like that, and I'm just going to cut around it like this, and I'm going to right click and say layer via copy, zoom out. We don't need this anymore, so I can delete that, move this, and use your move tool. We're going to set this right there like that. Now what do we do if we want to get rid of a black background? You use screen. You're right. So you want to make sure that you have the layer selected. Go under your blend mode and choose screen. Now we're going to zoom out and look at that. It looks really good. And I'm going to zoom in just like we did with the black. I'm going to just make a easy selection like that, or you can also paint it in. It doesn't matter. And I'm going to add a solid color by going under my adjustment, choose a solid color, make that black. And we are going to add a Gaussian blur. I already had a default, so I just clicked on that and it applied to it. And now it looks like we have a dark candle that is burning, and now we can see that the candle is burning. So now with this set, the other thing that you can see is that both the cake and the cake stand has a shadow as well as the cake on the plate. So it means that my image should also have what? It should have a shadow effect. So I'm going to make a selection of my thumbnail for the layer mask. So hold down Command, make a selection of the thumbnail of your layer mask. Now we want to go ahead and add an adjustment, a solid color. So go to your adjustment, add a solid color. It creates a silhouette of your selection. Now we want to pick a black and go ahead and click OK. Go under Edit, Transform, and click on Distort. Now I can go ahead and move my shadow like that, and I'm going to set it somewhere here and do something like that. So with this set, we want to go ahead and reduce the opacity so it's something more like that, and it gives it a realistic look, playing off what we see in terms of the shadow around the cupcakes. Now the shadow effect looks too sharp. So we want to go under filter and then go to blur, choose Gaussian blur. And of course we need to convert our layer into a smart object before we can do it. Now we can begin to play with the blur effect to see how much of an effect we want, because as you can see on the shadow for the cupcake, is also not sharp. It's a little bit blurred. So we want to do the same thing. And I'm going to go ahead to click OK. Now, the only thing is that when you look at the subject, the shadow is only being cast from one end, but you can see that I need to have a little bit more shadow at the leg. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new layer, and I'm going to pick up my brush tool with my foreground as black. I'm going to go ahead to reduce my flow at the top to, let's say, 13, my opacity. I'm going to take that down. I'm going to reduce my brush head by clicking on my left and right bracket. Now I'm going to go ahead to zoom in and out and get it much closer. Now we want to go ahead and paint in this area, so we sort of add a little bit more of a shadow effect from the leg portion like that. And I'm going to do a similar thing here, but this place we don't need too much. So this seems good. I'm going to zoom back out so we can see. So we have a very nice effect, and click on the image layer. Make sure you click on the image thumbnail, not the layer mask thumbnail. Now we want to go under filter, choose camera raw filter. Now you have the camera raw filter command. Now we want to brighten up this image, so you can take the temperature back just a little. Now we just want to go under vibrance, increase it, and also increase the saturation a little. We want to go ahead and click OK. So all the way to the top of our image, click on the top layer, go ahead to your adjustment and add a color lookup. So in your color lookup option under your property, you can choose to strip. Now it can change the entire image for you, or you can choose 3 strip, which basically enhances the photo and basically blends everything in and makes it one image. This is how you basically make a miniature Photoshop image. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I'll be doing more of these, so please give this video a thumbs up. Bye y'all.